Thank you for joining us. I'm Allison Haunss, and this is the Working Woman Report. The pandemic has been devastating to the arts industry. From canceled concerts to lockdown galleries to the unprecedented shutdown of Broadway. So many artists, performers, musicians, and all of the people tied to this community are struggling to stay afloat. However, there are some extraordinary individuals who are doing everything they can to help the arts economy survive and thrive in the days to come. Christina Maxwell is one of those individuals. As manager of the High Line 9 Gallery, a building located under the High Line, she's in charge of a unique new exhibit. The gallery includes a new socially distanced venue featuring artists working behind glass-enclosed studios where people can see the artists creating. Art lovers can safely walk through the gallery and watch the pieces come to life in real time. Better yet, they can buy pieces that catch their eye.
And Christina joins us now from the gallery. So Christina, tell me how this works.
Of course, so we've set up quite the unique experience here to match the unique times that we are in. We're located underneath the High Line. We're sort of running right along 10th Avenue from 27th Street to 28th Street. So you can enter either way. We have a two-way flow of traffic, of course, organized with stickers of which way to walk. We adhere to all local, state, and federal guidelines following COVID regulations. So the 6-foot social distancing, the required face coverings. I'm alone in a gallery now, so I get to break that rule for a second. And then we also have stickers in front of each artist living storefront that show you where you can stand to keep everyone 6 feet apart. But what you can expect is to enter, to walk through this passageway, and on either side to see these beautiful glass galleries that normally display finished work with QR codes that you can scan to pull up the artist profile and to purchase their finished work. But as an added bonus, and I think the best part without question, the artists are actually working each in their own individual galleries turned into living, working storefronts, and you can see them in the process of creating.
That's amazing. So, I mean, the alternative was just having the gallery shut down. How did you come up with this idea, or who came up with the idea, and then how did you make it happen?
Right. So this was totally born out of COVID. I don't think we would be here if it weren't for COVID, which is in such a time of darkness. It's great that we had something new and lovely come out of it. But basically, you know, our passageway's open. And so we had the option of just hanging art behind the wall. I mean, behind the glass walls, which is lovely, but not that exciting. And I actually called Sugarlift, which is an art advisory group who I'd worked with before. They're amazing at thinking outside of the box. And we sort of brainstormed together and came up with this idea of giving a glimpse into the creative process and creating almost like a living zoo for the artists, and also giving 5 extraordinary, very deserving artists a space to work in, a gorgeous space to work in at such a difficult time for the art community.
And tell me a little bit about the artists and how did they respond to possibly working in front of people?
It has been amazing. I'm going to give you a quick tour of, I'm actually in Vicky Baranguet's studio. She's this fabulous Uruguayan artist. And she, every time I talk to her about this experience, she just like tears up. And because, you know, she'd been working out of her cramped Astoria apartment, like so many people have. And she gets to work in this instead. You can see sort of the beautiful natural light. All of our galleries have this gorgeous natural skylight, and she's just had canvases spread out all throughout the space. And another one of our artists, Tony, he goes by Ruben 415 as his art street name. But he actually also had to give up his studio space completely and was working out of his 3-year-old son's bedroom when he got the phone call about this opportunity. And he's here like every single morning at 7 a.m. to paint in the morning light. And I have to say, some of our artists were a little nervous about, they said, you know, like, I'm going to feel like a fish in a fishbowl, you know, painting here, but they've loved it. And I think that instead of being intimidating, it's been sort of this amazing connection and creative fuel for the artists.
Why is it so important for us to support art right now in this time?
You know, I have always been such a believer in the healing power of art. I also work with pediatric oncology patients doing music and art therapy. So I work for an amazing nonprofit called Rip Rap, and I go into patients' homes and we'll create art together. They'll paint the ocean, or we'll make a snow globe or sing music. And I've witnessed the healing power of art through that. I also have a background in musical theater and Broadway work, and was trained as a writer as well. And I'm very much a believer that art is a way that we tell stories, the way that we connect across divides. And I think most importantly, art is a way to teach empathy. And not many things can teach empathy, but I think that art can, because it takes you out of your own experience and takes you into a larger experience. And I think that artists have always been the leaders, whether it's performative art or, fine art or whatever it is in its form. Art has always been the way that we imagine something better than the reality that we're in, or we force ourselves to look more closely at what we can do to live better and to be better and to do better. And I think we all need a little bit of healing. We all need a little bit of imagining brighter and better days. And I think that art is what allows us to believe that's possible.
And I know that on Thursday nights, it's going to be a special event at the gallery. Tell me a little bit about that.
It's fun. It's been so interesting watching all of our artists work, because they all have different styles of working. I mentioned Ruben likes to come paint at like 7 a.m. and he's very organized. And then we have Nico, who's in the gallery right behind me. Nico, he was here last night until 11 p.m. and he loves to listen to music and be dancing and painting on this huge 20-foot canvas late at night. So all of the artists work sort of at different hours, although our passageway is open every day from 7 a.m. until 10 p.m. But we decided it would be fun to have a time when the artists will all definitely be in their individual studios working. So every Thursday from 6 to 8 p.m., each artist will be working in their studio. And we have this gorgeous on-site Italian restaurant called Il Piccolo Ristoro that's doing outdoor dining. So they'll be doing some specialty cocktails sort of themed around our artists. Tonight's cocktail is called The Residency, which is super fun. And you can go, grab a cocktail, enjoy a meal outside. Of course, following all guidelines, and then following all capacity percentages and face coverings and distancing. After that, you can walk through and you can see the artists at work and scan and purchase their pieces.
Well, it just sounds like an amazing idea, an amazing opportunity, and I'm so thrilled that you're leading the way. It's so important to all of the artists and so important to New York City.
Well, thank you. And I think that's something else we wanted to do with this was give New York City something back. And all of the artists, the new work they're creating is on the theme of Dare to Reimagine, a city that's healed in body and spirit. And so that's something that I think all New Yorkers could have a little bit of right now.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story and introducing us to this concept. I'm sure you're going to get a lot of people.
I love it. Thank you for having us. We're
My
very
pleasure.
appreciative.
Thank you.
Once again, the Highline 9 Gallery is open to foot traffic 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. Monday through Saturday. The gallery itself runs under the High Line along 10th Avenue with an entrance on 27th and 28th Streets. For more information, you can head to highline9.com. And if you're interested in making a purchase of a piece of art, head to sugarlift.com/HL9. Coming up next, we'll meet 3 musicians who are using their skill and creativity to figure out a way to keep the music flowing. That's coming up next.
Where high values drive high demand. Where getting ahead comes from giving back. Where the education earns national recognition. Where? Here at Malloy College. Money Magazine's #1 value all-star in the nation.
I don't look any different than you, but I have type 1 diabetes.
You can't outgrow type 1 diabetes.
It's not caused by your diet. It's not caused by anything you did.
It's kind of hard to live with it.
It's not easy. I do need to check my sugar a lot, my levels.
If you see someone with an insulin pump or pricking their finger and you want to know more about T1D, just ask them.
T1D looks like me.
T1D looks like me.
T1D looks like me.
While plenty of music-related jobs were getting canceled during the pandemic, 3 New York City-based musicians, vocalist Tana Alexa, Serentip, and saxophonist Owen Brodeur, decided to support the New York City music scene by creating Live from Our Living Rooms. Their inaugural festival and fundraiser, which ran April 1st through the 7th, featured daily children's music showcases, masterclasses, and events and performances, all to raise money in order to give grants to New York City-based musicians who had lost work due to the pandemic. That initial festival has spawned a new ongoing initiative, which is now focused on keeping musicians working.
Tana, Serentip, and Owen join us now with more on how this all got started. Congratulations, everyone.
Thank you so much.
So how did you come up with this idea?
So basically, we started, I started this back in March when the pandemic first hit, and I was just, browsing through my Instagram and my Facebook, and I saw that so many of my friends were missing out on tours and, debut album releases and all these things. And I felt like I wanted to try to help. So I started a personal GoFundMe fundraiser to try to help. And after just a few days of, posting about it on my social media, Owen Brodeur, a friend of mine who's also here on the call, reached out and said, hey, what if we started like an online festival to try to raise money for your fundraiser? And I was like, oh, that's a great idea. Let me also reach out to Tana, who's an amazing vocalist and who knows a lot about grant writing and also how to kind of, be able to raise tax deductible funds.
So Serentip and I have been friends for a while now, and we're both vocalists here in New York City. And as Serentip said, she and Owen had this conversation, and they brought me on board to basically help with the fundraiser. And I had the idea of getting a nonprofit sponsor who would help us solicit tax-deductible donations. And the idea was that we would basically start small. We would start with New York City, which is our home and our love, and we would help New York City musicians. So originally, we had New York City-based musicians performing for this week-long online festival, and we were soliciting tax-deductible donations to give performance grants through our nonprofit partner to New York City-based musicians. So we had this festival. We raised almost $60,000 in for the duration of the festival, and then we had a grant application cycle through which we had an independent panel look through all of the applications, and then we gave grants.
That's amazing. Now, Owen, tell me a little bit about yourself. You play the saxophone, and what is it like for artists right now?
Well, I think it's a continuously changing market. Right now we're in a very different situation than we were back in April. Back in April, every musician was experiencing a similar circumstance where everything we had through, virtually the end of the year was getting canceled, and there was no alternative. Live from Our Living Rooms was, I think, one of the first versions of an alternative performance venue where people were live streaming concerts from their homes. I think that is it was a great kind of vehicle for the time, but I think we've seen things move on, and now summer camps where there are educational opportunities for musicians are coming up all over the place. Live from Our Living Rooms hosted one such event. Venues are hosting concerts, live concerts, on their stages with no audiences and live streaming those for people to watch from their homes. Another way about going to see live music is to go see outdoor concerts where socially distanced audiences can enjoy music live and in person. Another way forward, I think, is going to be pre-recording concerts with high production value and marketing those concerts, selling those concerts to different presenters all over the world so that people are able to watch high quality performances on an ongoing basis. Our fundraiser is still open. We are continuously collecting donations to support this grant initiative, and they can go to our website, www.livefromourlivingrooms.com. And from there, you'll easily navigate to our donate page. but you can contribute any amount. No amount is too small.
Amazing.
And I think it's also important just to note that not only is the donation part important, but it's also important to note that our grant application cycle, our next one will be announced soon. And so any artists who are US-based artists, we've expanded now to all of the US, who are in need during this time. Once we open our grant application process, you can apply for a grant, and hopefully you'll get one.
Well, thank you all so much for talking about this issue, but more importantly, doing something about the arts. I think it's so inspirational and very entrepreneurial. I love that.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, and I wish you all the best of luck.
Thank you. Best to you as well. Stay safe, stay healthy, and thank you so much for having us.
Absolutely.
The initiative was credited as the first online jazz festival by Rolling Stone, and the team's efforts were also featured in publications including the Financial Times, Wall Street Journal, and most recently Forbes. For more information, go to livefromourlivingrooms.com. Coming up next, the theater community rallies to keep the cultural heartbeat of New York City Broadway beating. That's coming up next. Stay tuned.
Each of these apples represents a different New Yorker. Hey, Tim. How are the kids, Sherry? This one hasn't shown symptoms, but while she doesn't know it, she has COVID-19. So, she goes out, and despite trying to stay 6 feet apart, one sick apple has spoiled the bunch. But if everyone wears a protective face covering, the better protect others and themselves.
While the footlights on Broadway are dimmed right now, there are people within the community who are pulling out all the stops to draw attention to how interconnected Broadway and the arts in general are to the U.S. economy. 3 members of the industry have started a new movement called Be an Arts Hero that emphasizes arts and culture's contribution to the economy. Actor Brooke Chiemi Ishabishi is one of the founders of the campaign, which is highlighting the human and financial toll of letting the arts industry collapse. She joins us now with more on what the campaign's all about.
Thank you so much for having us, Allison. We're so happy to be here.
Now tell me about this program and how you got involved.
Right. So myself, Carson Elrod, Jenny Grace Malcolm, the 3 of us realized no one was coming to save us. We were waiting for the troops, the infantry, the battalions to come on in and save the day. And the 3 of us are all artists, activists, organizers. And we looked at each other and we said, oh, wow, we need to advocate for ourselves. No one's coming. So we realized that we needed to mobilize all the different groups who were, I think, working on their own independent efforts to seek relief for themselves. So we realized that there was a gap, there was a need, a mobilization effort, a collective. For example, we needed to, I think, unify the boots on the ground, working class, blue collar arts workers and laborers alongside the celebrities, alongside the unions, the major institutions of the states, and the working class local institutions in America. And so that's what we started to do, and now it's just taken off over the last month. It's only been about a month.
That's amazing. Now, can you give us a sense of what the Broadway community is feeling? Because I think just as a New Yorker, when you see that Broadway is closed, I think we're all just stunned. And then to hear that it's not going to open until 2021, what is that like for you?
I mean, it's incredibly devastating for the thousands of arts workers who are impacted by the Broadway shutdown. You know, at first, so many of our friends were in productions that were stalled with, TBA, shut down until further notice. It's been devastating for the entire community. The idea that it was at first going to be an intermission, a brief intermission, and now that's turned into months upon months upon months of laborers who have no job for the foreseeable future. It's incredibly terrifying, I think, for laborers and workers whose health insurance is tied to their employment. So many of them have lost their health insurance because they don't have a job for the foreseeable future. So it's devastating emotionally, but also on a very real socioeconomic level. People are losing their health insurance.
I think everyone immediately thinks about the actors and actresses, but there seems to be an entire ecosystem that's very deeply affected by what's happening here.
Yes, I mean, we're talking about, when you just think about the performing arts alone, that's, electricians, gaffers, stagehands, crew members, people who work in the box office, concessions, custodian services, administrative staff. So, and that's just performing arts. When you think about museums, you think about the people who work in the gift shops. Like you said, they are large ecosystems that lift up entire sectors, that lift up entire hubs, and I also think about the arts as a jobs multiplier. You think about a hub like Broadway. Broadway alone brought in more revenue than all of the New York and New Jersey sports teams combined in 2019. It was around 1.83 billion in revenue. You think about what that means for an economy, what that means in terms of jobs. It is millions of jobs. The arts and culture sector employs 5.1 million arts workers. So you're talking about not just the fancy celebrities, you're talking about the people who lift up and make up the infrastructure of the entire arts and culture economy.
What do you think Broadway is going to look like when we return?
I think it will look very different. Everyone has a different projection of when it will return and what it's going to look like. I think at this point, we will not be able to return in any kind of fulsome way soon. And I think everyone can agree on that. At first it was a couple months, then it was 6 months. And for the Broadway League and from what many other organizations and institutions are now projecting, it's not going to be until likely spring of next year. So when it returns, I think, it's hard to think about the human toll of this, right, Allison? Because at this point, how many laborers are not going to be able to return because they're sick, or because COVID got them and they weren't able to maintain their health insurance because they lost their jobs. We think about our friends Brian and John, who helm the Costume Industry Coalition. They make all of the costumes for Broadway, cruise ships, tours, theme parks. They are the infrastructure that lifts up communities like Broadway, because they provide the services for Broadway to be able to run. Many of these local shops are unable to continue to pay their rent for their warehouses. They have to lay off their staffs. So what happens when Broadway says, okay, we're ready to return, and they pick up the phone and it's a cutoff line because all these costume warehouses weren't able to keep their lights on. So that's what we're looking at. When we come back, it's going to be wholly different because so many people will not be able to sustain themselves.
Well, before I let you go, how can we help and how can we support your program?
I think the most important thing for anyone who's watching or listening to understand is that there is a humanitarian toll and a systemic economic collapse that we're facing if we do not receive proportionate relief from Congress immediately. What we are strongly demanding at this point is $43.85 billion in relief. We need Congress to craft and pass meaningful legislation immediately. And in order to, I think, push them into doing that, we need people to call their senators. And we need people to do whatever they can to tweet, tag, call, write their senators to make, I think, a rallying war cry that will be heard on the Hill.
Well, we are going to provide all of that information on our website so that people can join you in this effort, because this is not something that, as we can all see, is going to end anytime soon. So we really need to support the community. And I just thank you so much for leading the way and taking charge and taking action to help the community, the arts community, the entire arts community, but especially Broadway.
Thank you, Allison. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Now, everything you need to contact your leaders is on the website. So go to beanartshero.com, and they make it so easy by providing a pre-filled action template letter, social media handles, and phone numbers for all of the senators, a sample call script, graphics to share on social media, you name it, they have it. So it's all set up for you. All you have to do is take action to help out, and of course, we hope you will. And that's it for this week's edition of the Working Woman Report. Thank you so much for joining us and being a part of our community. Be sure to keep in touch online through our website, which is workingwomanreport.com. And of course, through social media. We are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, you name it. We're always here to help and share what we learn. I hope you and your family stay safe and healthy.